So, 11 years, 11 whole years on this website. Yeah, not 10 years. I added an extra year just because it's kind of cool double number. No, I meant to do this last year, but getting your first full-time job kind of gets in the way of that. Yeah, man, it is crazy how long I have been on this website now. 11 whole years. And, I've seen so many people around, who have been around as long as I have, and they've done way more than me. And, I've seen all these people who have done way more than me and made it way further than me, and I've just kind of been set stagnant, so much so that, I've pretty much completely stopped for quite a while. I've just kind of been silently observing everything going on around me. Whereas, when I started out, I was doing a whole lot more, and I really want to change that because I feel like it's been kind of symbolic of an overall problem I've been having, and I think trying to get back into my YouTube channel will help me to get out of this rut that I've been in lately. I've just lately been dealing with, I don't know if I want to call it outright laziness. Some of it definitely is laziness, but, just life in general. I've done with, there's so many people, that give the spiel about like anxiety and depression and all that stuff, and I always think it's like cheesy or overdone or whatever, but once you actually experience it for yourself, you actually understand where those people are coming from. To an extent, I actually am kind of happy that I've been stagnant because I did a lot of stupid stuff back in the day. I said and did a lot of stupid things that I really regret doing, and I just cringe looking back at. Even though I'm sure all the other people that were involved don't think about it, at least anywhere near as much as I do. But, I am kind of glad that, I've stopped myself from making an even bigger fool of myself than I did, because I only really did minor offenses back then. I've definitely learned a lot since then, since I became stagnant, so I am kind of glad that I gave myself some time to learn, and so that I wouldn't keep making those same mistakes, and how I could avoid them when I do eventually come back. At the same time, though, I did make some, maybe not full-fledged friends, but at least like acquaintances who like I had some fun interactions with from time to time, talking about similar interests, and I feel like by becoming stagnant, I've ruined my chances of maybe potentially working with some of those people on my own big projects, because I know a lot of them have interest in doing that kind of stuff as well. But I know I can't let myself, but I know I shouldn't bring myself down with those thoughts. It's just inevitable. It's best to keep moving forward and focus on the now and do what I can with what I have now. Maybe I can get back with being friends with some of those people and do big stuff once I get around to doing it. But, I don't want to bring myself down, because I've been in a vicious cycle of, thinking that I should just stay stagnant because of how I've ruined my chances, and I know that's not a healthy way of thinking. It's just yet another sign of my depression that I've been dealing with that I want to try to get out of. To an extent, I have always struggled with that, but I think a big part of why I was able to be more active on YouTube all those years ago when I first started out is just because of how I was younger. I hadn't dealt with that stuff all that as much before, so I was just able to plow through it a lot more. But as the years have gone on and the struggles have gotten worse, it's just been harder and harder to avoid, being in a slump that comes with, anxiety and stuff like that really getting to you. It's kind of funny to think that in a way it's actually been, for me, the more things change, the more they stay the same, because I actually first got into YouTube, I think around 2010, 2011, somewhere around that time, and it was actually because of a game that I actually still play from time to time to this day, Jimmy Neutron Attack of the Twonkies. There was this one level that I was stuck on, the park level. It's the part where you're trying to get all the llamas back into the cage, and I could not for the life of me beat that level. And then I put two and two together on how, YouTube has a lot of how-to videos, and I could easily just look up a how-to video on how to beat that area, and lo and behold, I found a playthrough showing it off. I don't remember which one, it was a really long time ago, but ever since then, I've just been, I don't know, addicted, but just really into YouTube. It's just been a big part of my life ever since. I regularly watched it on and off. A lot of the videos that I watched back then I haven't been able to find. They were just really old and definitely deleted, but I ended up getting my YouTube channel just a few years after that. I got it as a Christmas present, which is why I'm doing my anniversary around Christmas time. Although actually, my first few videos that I did were actually made, I think, a month or two before I even had my YouTube channel, which is kind of funny to think, because in a lot of those videos, at the very end of them, I just for no reason said, "That's all the time we have," just because that was a common thing for YouTubers to say back then. And it's funny, even back then, I knew I didn't need to say that, but I still said it anyway, just because it was the thing to do. And also, more things change, the more they stay the same. Aside from the video quality, the videos that I would make all throughout the years on YouTube weren't really that different from how I started out up until, when I finally, became stagnant, from around 2013 to early 2018. The kind of videos I made were pretty much the same, just kind of low quality vlog type videos. I did do the occasional music video type thing, and I thought myself as like such a professional editor using Windows Movie Maker. I had learned it, around, the time I started my YouTube channel, and I just thought of myself as such a professional, editor making these, crummy AMV type of things, just slideshow type things, like pictures and videos and stuff like that with royalty-free music in the background. But hey, I mean, it was fun, and it was some kind of experience, right? A good experience in the editing software that's basically the butt of jokes online nowadays. Like, if you use that, you're pretty much seen as like a full-on amateur. Although towards the end of my library, you can see when I started getting into the big thing that I would become really interested in throughout my history on YouTube, which is reviewing. Throughout my whole life, I've always been into cartoons and video games, and I don't remember exactly. Well, actually, I do remember. The very first reviewing content I had ever seen was a top 10 video on the quote-unquote biggest problems with modern SpongeBob. It was by a guy named CoolCat001100, and it's so funny to think. I remember, even before I got into reviews online, I remember feeling the same way that a lot of people did about SpongeBob back then. A lot of the kind of complaints that are often mocked nowadays, but to an extent, I understand why they get mocked, but I actually still kind of agree with them, and I'm sure some people agree with a bit of it to an extent, but, back then, it's funny, I felt really validated to finally see opinions I had had for so long on what were then the newer episodes of SpongeBob, but they're now the middle episodes, and, it's almost felt like disillusioning, like, especially in these recent years, to see people starting to disagree with it. Yeah, looking back, a lot of the criticisms that were made back then, I do think, are kind of dumb. The big thing a lot of people have pointed out, and I do agree with this, is that some people mistranslated the style of like riffing that was popular at the time with people like Nostalgia Critic and AVGN. A lot of people mistranslated it as like actual reviewing by like people who actually got legitimately angry, and so these people would present themselves as like actual legit reviewers who like would make these super exaggerated claims, but they were meant to be taken seriously and not as a joke. And it's even funnier, seeing some of these people, retrospectively looking back at the content that they made that influenced that style, and them talking about, how they actually didn't mean a lot of what they said and were just exaggerating because of how it was the popular style at the time. But, at the same time, it is definitely important to separate, fiction and reality, and a lot of those reviewers definitely did not do the best job at doing that, and I and many others unfortunately couldn't see that line. And I and many others unfortunately took videos like that super seriously and would actually get legitimately upset by stuff like that. Just me being my naive, autistic teenage self, I was super emotionally driven back then. But, I kind of look back and laugh at it now, realizing how unserious it actually was. It's almost like when you look back at how you were a kid and you took stuff super seriously that wasn't really serious at all. And it's even funnier seeing some of those reviewers who made those videos back in the day retroactively discussing their old videos and talking about how they actually weren't legitimately angry and they didn't actually mean a lot of what they said, and that they were just mistranslating, Nostalgia Critic and AVGN, as I said. And if you look at the reviews that I did, around that time when that style of content was popular, and even around when it was starting to finally die out, I kind of fell into that same trap with stuff like my Prancer review or my Emoji Movie impressions video. They're just super cringy looking back because of how badly I fell victim to that same trap a lot of other people did back then. But then after I did a handful of those kind of videos, things just kind of fizzled out. The latest upload you can find on my channel before this was from 2017, but I actually have some uploads from early 2018 that I have unlisted because they were update videos that ended up not being true. I had a blog around that time that I ended up not doing anything on, but I tried working on a big, huge critique of Tak and the Power of Juju, which was another game that I grew up with. And, I was super anxious to finish it and get it out, but I just wasn't happy with it, and I don't know why. I just barely wasn't able to finish it, and it was just super frustrating, especially because of how anxious I was to have it finished. And that's kind of just been the feeling I've been having lately, except I've been working on stuff even less than that. It's weird for me to think, it's not so much COVID that caused me to fall into this slump, because I was already starting to fall into it even beforehand. I think it was honestly more so how school was getting a lot more difficult for me. High school, especially towards the end, started getting really difficult and stressful for me, and then college. Oh my god. I am not exaggerating. College was probably the worst time of my entire life. It was just so unbelievably stressful. All the stress I had of having good grades as a kid were just amplified with college because of how much more difficult it was and how much more important it was for determining, what kind of job would work out for me. Speaking of stuff happening before COVID, though, I also, along with autism, also have OCD, and around that same time when I stopped being active on YouTube, I was also starting to deal with that a lot more. Like, I was just super obsessive about being clean, especially after showering, and so I would always just be super paranoid about touching even the slightest of things, and I would always try to have my own little secluded area. And I would always wait till much later in the day when I felt like I didn't need to worry as much about being clean anymore. I don't even entirely know why, I guess just because of things settling. I don't even really know why, but that getting worse along with around the time of college happening was just a recipe for disaster. I always just felt super secluded. I had like 2 years of like feeling super secluded and like just alone, both because of my OCD and especially because of all the stress of college, with me like learning a lot of stuff that nobody else understood or was able to understand to help me with. Although, while I was like smack dab in the middle of college, I actually had a video project idea. It was in, the summer of 2021. I had planned to do a video series on Rocko's Modern Life that would have been in the every episode reviewed format created by Pie Guy Rules, who was one of those reviewers that I watched back in the day and continued watching for quite some time. But not only were the problems I was having with college and OCD causing me a lot of stress and depression at the time, but I also had something really, really bad happen to me at that same time that was actually caused by those problems I was having with college and OCD, and that just completely drained any and all motivation I had to do that project, and so I just continued to be in that same slump that I've been ever since early 2018, and even after college I still continue to be in that slump. A few months after college, I actually finally got my first full-time job. As I mentioned before, I had plans to do this and also some other stuff that I'll mention here in a minute for my 10th anniversary on YouTube, but I got my first full-time job just a few months before that, and I don't know, I guess me just being preoccupied with that job ended up causing me to completely forget about it. I didn't remember how I wanted to do that until a few days after, and I just felt like not really bothering with it. And I thought back then, ooh, maybe I'll do this for the 11th anniversary, and I thought that'd be ridiculous and weird, but here we are with me doing that now. More than ever with this job, I've just been feeling like I really need to get out of this slump that I've been in lately, because the job I have right now, I'm not super happy with. Like, it's not terrible, like, it's fine, but I definitely want to do something that's more related to what I'm actually passionate about, which is cartoons and video games. And I really do think the best way for me to get out of this rut is to first start off by becoming more active on my YouTube channel again, because that'll help me to, at least be doing something, something related to what I'm passionate about and what I enjoy. And I think that can help me to eventually start doing bigger stuff, like actually doing, like, making games or making cartoons like I've been wanting to do for so long, but have just been struggling to get the motivation to do so. And I think I am finally starting to make progress on feeling better, if this vlog is anything to go by. But, these past few weeks I've especially been seeing progress in my mood being better and me doing more stuff, even if it's just something simple as like going out and running errands and stuff like that. Like, for the longest time I've been struggling with just, kind of sitting around and doing nothing here at the house. Even after getting my job, I've been struggling with that more. And I think having a full-time job, working 40 hours a week is another way of making it hard for me to feel motivated to do other stuff. But I think I am finally starting to crawl out of that hole I've dug myself in, and hopefully I can keep it that way, especially with some stuff I've got planned for my channel going forward. For the past few years, since Christmas 2020, I've been playing the Jak and Daxter collection on PS4, and while playing that, I discovered the recording feature on the PS4, and since then I've been recording a lot of weird and funny stuff that I've found in each of the games, and I've actually archived a lot of those recordings onto my YouTube channel, but I've never publicized any of them. I just uploaded them onto my YouTube channel privately so that I could just get them off of the PS4 and off of my computer and stuff like that. But I actually do think a lot of those archives that I've uploaded to my channel are worth publicizing, just because of, weird or funny or cool stuff that I show off in them. So I plan to publicize a lot of them. Similarly, I also have a bunch of recordings on my phone of games that I've played on mainly the Wii and the PS2, because those are the consoles I grew up with, and those are the consoles I have a lot of games for. And I have a wide variety of games that I've recorded cool, weird, and or just funny stuff on my phone. So I think that would be another good source of content to keep my channel alive. Along with PS4 clips, I'd also have plenty of clips from my phone of not just Jak and Daxter games, but all sorts of different games, mainly platformers from the 6th gen, because that's what I grew up with mainly. Along with that, I also have a pretty big project idea. I haven't actually gone through with any of it yet, but I do think it would be another great way for me to transition. I have an idea for a podcast, also kind of inspired by Pie Guy Rules. I've thought a lot about like doing like professional, like fully edited reviews over the years, but I've never just gotten the motivation to do it. But Pie Guy talking about how he did his podcast for a while, the recast, as a way to like keep his motivation of talking about cartoons without having to put a whole lot of effort into it. That gave me the idea to maybe do something similar to that as like a transitional point to maybe eventually getting into doing bigger discussion type videos, or even just getting into doing bigger projects like I've talked about before. I don't think the podcast will have any kind of like central theme of like types of stuff that's discussed like what Pie Guy did, but I will still have like certain mediums that I'll discuss. I guess that is a certain type, but you know what I mean. Like I'll talk mainly about like animation and gaming related stuff. The name of it will actually be a name that I'll be resurrecting from an old YouTube channel I made that isn't up anymore. CV Nexus Cartoons and Video Games Nexus. I came up with that name back when I was a kid when trying to think of company names if I were to ever actually make my own company. And I do think it is actually kind of a cool name, and I do think it'd be fitting for the name of the podcast that I want to do, where I talk about cartoons and video games. Honestly, I'm not too upset that that old channel is gone, because literally all it was just me re-uploading clips or full episodes of cartoons that I liked, or weird AMVs that I would make with the YouTube video editor that existed at the time to make like trailers of games or stuff like that. Yeah, it really wasn't anything special, so I'm not really all upset that it got deleted because of copyright. It was only inevitable that would happen. It was fun, but yeah, it's not that great looking back. But I think I could make something better out of it by making a podcast, where I'm more transformative, not showing anything off and just purely discussing stuff. I would definitely want to take some cues from the reviews that I watched when I was younger, but obviously trying to change it more into, something more productive, which is what everybody's been trying to do nowadays with that kind of reviewing style. Being more civil and productive with the kind of conversations you start instead of being overly exaggerated and angry when it's not really necessary. I don't know. I just think something like that could be fun, and like I said, a great transitional point for me. I don't know if I'll stop making YouTube content altogether all over again if I finally do manage to get the motivation to do bigger stuff, but for the time being, I think resurrecting my YouTube channel will be a good way for me to take a big step forward into actually getting into what I'm passionate about and no longer being stuck in the slump that I'm in. So here's to hopefully a good few more years on YouTube. I do kind of wonder how those reviews that I didn't finish would have turned out if I actually had ended up finishing them. From what I remember, they would have at least been better than the ones that I have up on my channel, but they still do kind of have some of those exaggeration problems. It's funny, this whole time I didn't even think to mention my second channel that I still have up, my gaming channel. Honestly, I don't really plan to do anything with it. It only further shows how little I've done over the past few years, how stagnant I've been. I didn't even finish the one series that I had done on it, and honestly, I don't really plan to continue anything on that channel. I might actually talk about that series of games I did on that secondary channel on my podcast, actually. That could be fun. Honestly, though, I don't really feel like deleting it, though, because I've actually used it these past few years mainly as a way to, like, keep a lot of my watch history on my old YouTube channel still up, just for the sake of, like, looking through to see the kind of stuff I watched years back. I've always been a very sentimental person, just as part of my OCD I've talked about before. I just like looking back at the past to see what things were like, so I think I'll still keep my gaming channel up just for personal reasons, but I don't actually plan to do anything with it content-wise.